What's up, everyone? Thomas here with ForReel, and I am hopping out of the Seattle International Film Festival and right into hot docs. I still have some SIFF content coming up, so keep an eye out for that. But in the meantime, I am excited to be talking with Matthew Simpson from Awesome Friday so that we can talk about hot docs. Matt, welcome to the video. Welcome to Hot Docs. How excited are you for this?
It's my first time covering hot docs, so I'm actually pretty stoked about it. I don't, I have to go double check, but I don't think I've actually covered a documentary festival before, so it's an
Yeah.
interesting change of pace.
Yeah, this is my opportunity. I love hot docs because this is my opportunity to catch a lot of films that I wasn't able to get to at other festivals like Sundance and South by Southwest. And there are some titles that'll probably come up here that I'll say I really wanted to see at these other festivals and couldn't. Hot docs is the place that I can do it, and so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, and you've been to more festivals than I have so far this year, but with your Rotten Tomatoes accreditation giving you all that weight.
Let me
Uh,
tell you that there are pros and cons to everything. So with the blessing of access comes the stress of stress.
yeah,
But
I feel that
I'm
that's the other reason I haven't been to as many festivals this year.
yeah, you know what I mean. I've said this before, going into other festivals, that mental health and my mental stability is a very important thing for me to be mindful of as I'm taking on all these films and producing content while working a full-time job. It's a grind for a lot of us, and so I understand that. So hopefully everyone else out there understands what we go through to make this happen and supports the content.
Yeah, exactly.
So, let's go ahead and jump into discussion. I wanted to start this off. You mentioned I've mentioned that I've experienced some of the films at Hot Docs at other festivals before. There's just a couple that I want to highlight as things that I've seen before that I think are worth checking out here at Hot Docs. The first film that I want to mention is a film entirely beloved by our ForReel writer Taylor Beaumont, and that is Fire of Love. I remember when he saw this film at Sundance, and he just was glowing about it. He wrote a fantastic review, but essentially it's series of archival footage from these two volcanists, and it really kind of talks about their experience as volcanologists and as a couple. It's such an endearing film, and I encourage you to
That
go
sounds
read.
lovely.
It's wonderful, and what's really, and I've said this since it's come out, what's really impressive about it is that this footage was captured by these volcanologists but looks cinematic, like you would think. I mean, they were filmmakers while also being scientists, and it's just incredible the kinds of footage that they got, as if someone else, like, who is a full-time filmmaker, was filming it. Fantastic film. So I do recommend that one, and read Taylor Beaumont's review at thisisforreal.com. Framing Agnes is another one that has been popping up at film festivals. This is from director Chase Joint, who also directed No Ordinary Man, which I saw a few years ago when that was doing the film festival circuit. And I just think that Chase is doing a fantastic job getting trans stories out there, and really in an approachable way informing people about trans lives and trans history. It's such an educational experience anytime he comes out with a movie, for me, and I really appreciate that these stories of trans people are being more perpetuated, and in a way that's not preachy, right? So it's just educational and entertaining as well, when he does reenactments and things like that. So Framing Agnes is another one I recommend. um oh Also, My Old School from director Jonah McLeod. This was one that I caught at Sundance, and it was something that I I wasn't intending to watch at Sundance, but then just kind of threw it on, and it turned out to actually be really good. It's a very interesting mystery about this 16-year-old boy who enrolls in a high school, but has a very bizarre secret that is eventually revealed throughout the film. I was actually quite surprised with how much I like this. There, part of it is animated, and I don't know, me and my animated documentaries. So something I said at Sundance, because I was obviously a big fan of Flea last year. So this one comes up. It's not entirely animated, but a lot of it is animated, and I love mystery, especially in documentaries. So there's that
Wait
one.
a minute. You
I know.
liked Flea?
What? I know I shock everyone every time that I say it.
I don't think we've spoken in the past like 6 months without you mentioning how much you like that movie.
I'm pretty sure literally every time we've talked, I've mentioned how much I like Flea. So I just slip it into every conversation. And now I can
Yeah.
slip in exactly how upset I am that Flea didn't win any Oscars. But I'm moving on from that. Okay. I was gonna try to. And then the last one I want to mention in this segment of the video is TikTok Boom. I saw this one also at Sundance, and really, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily groundbreaking in terms of like what you can learn about TikTok if you're already on it and a part of the platform, but I do think it's an interesting like look behind the scenes at what TikTok influencers go through. And for those who aren't on TikTok, I think there is things that you can learn and figure out about the platform, and there's an experience to be had there. So yeah, not groundbreaking, but entertaining. And I mean, I'm on TikTok all the time, unfortunately. So I think I would be hypocritical if I didn't recommend the TikTok documentary. So
I mean,
okay.
it is an addictive app.
Oh my goodness, don't even get me started. I'm probably going to get off of this and then scroll through TikTok.
Yeah.
So there we go. I mean, those are the ones that I just wanted to mention really quick, and then we can jump into what we're excited to see for the first time here at Hot Docs. So I just did a bunch of talking. Matt, I'm gonna let you start with the film. What is one of the films that you are most excited to try to catch at Hot Docs?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I'm now going to add a few more to my list based on what you said there.
There you
The ones
go.
that I had actually kind of skipped over and in the list, and now I'm like, oh, maybe I should actually watch that.
That's exactly what we do this for.
Yeah, I'm gonna mix things up a little bit. The first one I definitely want to see is actually a short film, not a feature.
Okay.
It's only 6 minutes long, and it's called Bad at This. And apparently, it's about a man who just abandons. The write-up says that he abandons self-judgment and embraces sucking at his hobbies, and then it's just a story of him sucking at stuff. I find this to be a wonderfully endearing idea. You know, as someone who in the past has coached people and stuff, and who as a manager of people in my, day job, it's the first step to being good at something is sucking at it. So I kind of enjoy that there's this tiny little documentary about how great it is to suck at stuff.
You say that, and the first thing I think of, I don't know if you've seen Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I have now, yes, I saw it last week.
That's what that reminds me of, just being so bad at everything that this is the most interesting version of that.
Yeah, I'm going to plug my podcast right now because we're talking about that this week on our podcast.
There you go.
AwesomeFriday.ca.
Very cool. Well, the premise certainly sounds interesting, and I think Hot Docs is also a place where I do like to catch short films as well, short documentaries, and 6 minutes sounds like a easy enough runtime to consume this one.
Yeah, I mean, as an aside, one thing I really tried to do last year, I wasn't super successful at it, but one thing I tried to do last year at all the festivals that I went to is I tried to consume more short films. And let me tell you, it was never a bad idea.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because even if you watch one, you're like, oh, that wasn't very good. It's like 10 minutes max, and you just move on to the next one, right?
Absolutely.
Like, so you can watch like 5 or 6 in a row, and chances are you're going to get 3 or 5 good ones. And it's never a bad thing.
Yeah, I agree. Um, a film that I'm looking forward to and hoping that I can catch at Hot Docs is this film called The Last Lap Dance. It's directed by Isri Halpern. And this one just, it sounds super interesting. So the description says when the police closed Israel strip clubs in 2020, the social and political fallout pits sex workers demanding a voice against those who purport to represent the women's best interest. There's such an interesting conflict here, and I mean, there is no shortage at this point of COVID stories and shutdowns and like the struggle of like getting through COVID. And I don't know how much they're going to talk about that in this movie, but I do think that the topic of sex workers is a topic that's really emerging as something to take more seriously. And apparently, this movie I think it world premiered at Haifa Film Festival last year in Israel, and
Mhm.
I'm just very interested in seeing like how they cover this topic, and also considering the region that this takes place in, like what that conflict looks like over there. So.
It sounds it's on my list as well. It sounds really interesting because there's a, here in North America, there's been a real push towards the acceptance of sex work as work, but in more
Mhm.
conservative countries like Israel, where it's still being shut down, it becomes an interesting cultural lens to look at things through as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, all
Yeah.
right, what's next for you?
Next for me is one that I'm most looking forward to, and I will probably, no matter how good or bad it is, will watch more than once, and that is Kids in the Hall, Comedy Punks. Because I am a Canadian man about 40, and Kids in the Hall were the sketch comedy group that I grew up with. And their style of humor is not to everyone's taste, but if you like weird, niche, surreal, funky humor, they have always delivered on that front. Um, I don't know if I've seen anything by director Reg Harkema before, but I'm very much looking forward to this one. Any exploration of them as a group and their background is of interest to me, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Very cool. Yeah, this is another one that Taylor Beaumont covered at South by Southwest, I believe, and he gave a very positive score on this one as well, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So, yeah, his review for that again is at this is ForReel.com. But yeah, I'm hoping that I can make time for it. Unfortunately, I don't quite have the history that you guys do with this particular troupe. But
You will soon. They have
yes.
a new series commissioned, like a new season of their show
Mhm.
after 27 years or whatever has been commissioned for Amazon Prime,
For
and it's
Amazon Prime,
debuting
yeah.
in
I
a
did.
matter of days. Actually, I think it's May the 5th or May
Oh,
the
really?
14th. Like it's coming up soon.
Okay, nice.
Um, and so if you wanted a chance, I don't their movie Brain Candy, which I love, is just not really available anywhere, unfortunately. But I think
Mm-hmm.
basically all of their previous seasons of sketch comedy are on Prime now in most places.
Got it. Cool. Well, now I have more incentive to watch this film. In fact, I guess I don't know. Maybe it acts as like a promo for this Amazon thing coming out.
I mean, it
So
probably does. Let's be honest.
that's cool. The next one I want to talk about is another South by Southwest premiered film called Crows Are White. This is directed by Essen Nadim. And the description reads: at an isolated Buddhist monastery in Japan, a Muslim filmmaker exploring his fraught relationship to family and religion and a rebel monk. Exploring his fraught relationship to family, religion, and a rebel monk who sneaks heavy metal and ice cream between, pushing vows of silence and barefoot pilgrimages, share a search for enlightenment. There's a lot going on in there. And I think that that's
Yeah.
what makes it seem so interesting to me. I know that Taylor Baker with Drinking the Movies saw it and said that he thoroughly enjoyed it. And this movie has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's a pretty good sign for me. I tend to align with that tomato meter, even before my tomato meter approval. That's just kind of my relationship with the tomato meter. But yeah, 100%, it speaks volumes about the quality of this film. And again, and I think that I really like that juxtaposition between being being at this monastery and also kind of being a little bit of a rebel. What does that
Mhm.
look like? show me. Crows are
Yeah.
white. So
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. It's on my list as well.
yeah. All right. What's next for you?
So next for me is the one that is probably one of the bigger titles at the festival. I know that people saw it I think it played Sundance, but NAVALNY, which is all about the Russian opposition leader, who I believe was poisoned and exiled. And like, basically, if you've paid attention to the news in the past year, you've definitely heard the name before, but it's a documentary all about this Russian opposition leader. And Russia is a super terrifying but interesting place at the moment, and I would like to see more about that. This one, I don't know that much about it. I'd be purposely kept myself in the dark a little bit.
I will.
But it seems like the kind of thing that will almost certainly be nominated for all the awards later this year and early next year. So it's definitely on my list.
Right. I will continue to keep you in the dark about it. I did see it. It was a big announcement at Sundance because it was like their last announced title midway through the film. It was the last addition to the lineup, and I'm pretty sure it acted as like their closing night film or their closing film in a way, because and they made a really big deal about it. And so I did get to see it at Sundance. I don't think I'm as over the moon about it as a lot of people are, but it's certainly there's a certain level of relevance to it right now.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for, right? It's Russia's in the news.
Yes,
so
it's
yeah.
Which is good. And I guess that's not me saying that it's a bad documentary, right? No, I mean, there's certainly, it has an audience. And I think if you do keep up with the news, there's definitely a lot to absorb with it. I mean, the film it opened Seattle International Film Festival as well. So, there's a lot of hype around it and a lot of interest with it. I think it got a limited 2-day screening release or something like that. But yeah, this is something that I think you're right. I can't imagine it getting a bunch of Oscar nominations down the road. So yeah, it's a good one to have on your radar. So I guess on the subject of world conflicts, another film that I have on my list is A House Made of Splinters, from Simon Wilmot. And the description says, near Ukraine, there you go. Good relevancy there. Near Ukraine's front line, social workers at a special shelter offer refuge to abandoned children. With only 9 months to reunite families or find foster placements before having to transfer their wards to orphanages, Love tests resilience in this gripping award winner. Definitely a big title that I actually was really hoping to see this at Sundance, but just ran out of time. It was like, really, if I had one more day at Sundance, I probably would have caught this one. But obviously, being or at least taking place in Ukraine, there's some relevancy there. But I just think that this is going to be a very compelling kind of documentary. I think that there's a lot to care about with this, especially in the context that we're in now, and just putting that context with the conflict around what's happening, and this particular premise. I think that there's dots to connect there, and even beyond maybe the context of this movie. So and 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, so again, really, really positive buzz around this film.
It's interesting you keep citing the tomato meter, because I not to say that I don't often align with it. I often do, but I actually try and keep away from it until I've seen something.
What's interesting is that I think everyone has their own relationship with the tomato meter. I mean, I align with it in most cases. I've just found that I'll watch a film, go to the tomato meter, and be like, yeah, that sounds about right. But then there are people that go and watch things and they say, what? How did that happen, right? And not algorithms, but yeah, just what's the word I'm looking for when you collect?
I don't know, but festival think is definitely a thing. Like, you see something at a festival, you get swept up in it. Lots of people like it, and then it goes into general release, and most people are like, "Really, guys?" And not that it's not even to say that something's bad, but they're just like, "Really, 100%."
100%. it is interesting how that works, but everyone has their own relationship with it, and so take it with a grain of salt and understand yourself and your relationship with the tomato meter. But yeah, that's
Just the one thing I'm always reminding myself about with the tomato meter is that it's a measure of consensus and not quality, even though it
yes.
presents that consensus as quality.
I think that people interpret the consensus as quality, and I think that that can be unfortunate sometimes. And I'm happy that there are changes with the tomato, at least with Rotten Tomatoes, where they are incorporating the audience score a little bit more. And again, just know your relationship to the tomato meter. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So all right, a house made of splinters is what I just talked about. So what's next for you?
So next for me is one that I really hope I get to see. It's from director Catherine. I think the name is. I'm gonna butcher this, but I believe it's Zubik. It's Eastern European, and there's a C and a Z together. I can never. Anyway, it's called Once Upon a Time in Uganda, and it is at least a Canadian premiere, I believe, and it's a documentary about the Ugandan movie studio. Wakaliwood, which is they are famous for making high concept, high intensity action movies on a shoestring budget. Like exactly the kind of movie you'd imagine coming out of, unfortunately, like kind of like in an African sort of situation where there's no money, but a ton of creativity. That's the kind of movies that they make. And the ones that I've seen, and the one they're probably most famous for is called Bad Black, is legitimately fantastic. Wow. And I'm really super curious to see anything to do with behind the scenes of what they're doing, because the stuff that I've seen is just legitimately incredible.
Nice. So, yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's it's nice to see like just generally culture our best window into that kind of thing.
Yeah, that one wasn't on my radar until you mentioned it. So now I'm going to have to see if I can fit that one in. So thank you for bringing it up. The next one I'm going to talk about is the film Make People Better. I'm not going to pronounce his last name right. I am so sorry, but it's from director Cody She I don't know. I'm sorry. But the description says a rogue Chinese biophysicist disappears after developing the first designer babies, shocking the world and the entire scientific community. But an investigation shows he may not have been alone in his attempt to create a better human being. And I think that there's so much going on in this premise where there's kind of this like interesting science thing going on and controversy going on, but also kind of a mystery happening as well. When I have to ask questions throughout the premise or the narrative, I get very interested and excited about what I'm going to learn. And so that and I mean designer, I mean it's almost a thing from like a sci-fi film, designer babies, right? Like this is happening in the real world. Tell me more about that, right? It's only 83 minutes long, and this is the world premiere of the film at Hot Docs. So
yeah, it's definitely on my list as well, and I look forward to when it inevitably becomes remade as a sequel to Jurassic World.
yes, yeah. I can totally see that happening.
Yeah.
All right, what else you got?
Well, well, the last one I think that on my list for right now anyway is another world premiere at Hot Docs on, I believe, the 1st of May, and it is a documentary called Scrap, and it is basically all about our relationship with things, metal things in particular. I try to stay a little bit in the dark because I want to just like sit down and watch it basically in a dark room on a big screen if I can. But I know that there's a whole section about a scrapyard in the United States where a man just collects, like just has a whole bunch of really old cars that trees are growing into and around. I know there's a whole section about a scrapyard in Spain where they're taking apart ships, and parts of those ships are being used to build like churches. I know there's a section that's set in Bangkok, where it's about a whole family that lives in a abandoned, like an airplane graveyard, basically. And it looks super interesting, and I find it really interesting, the sort of like detritus of the world being repurposed. And the cinematography looks absolutely gorgeous. And it also just looks kind of soothing to me, like one of those documentaries that's nice and quiet and slow and just says, here's a thing to look at and think about. What do you think about that?
It,
Yeah, the world.
so peaceful. What's
Yeah.
funny is when you mention that synopsis, I don't know why you're reminding me of so many other films, but I immediately go to The Iron Giant when Dean is talking to the giant and he's like, over there is junk, what you currently have in your mouth is art. It's just so very
That's true. And to be fair, there is apparently, according to the synopsis, there is a section in the movie where there's a man, I think it's in Dakota, South Dakota. He's a
Mhm.
farmer and artist, and he repurposes old farm equipment into metal sculpture.
So this is a thing. Iron Giant was just ahead of its time.
Yeah, and it's honestly, a lot of that stuff is really interesting to me because the shipbuilding part, or the ship teardown part, is interesting because I am not one, but my dad was a sailor, so I've some knowledge of ships, and I grew up in a very rural place, and I actually do know someone who repurposes metal scrap into art, and so there's a lot of like weirdly personal connections to that kind of content for me. So
Very cool. I am super interested in this one now. Yeah, you brought it up, and I think I'll have to make time for it. The last one I'm going to talk about is a film that screened at South by Southwest and Cleveland International Film Festival. It's called The Thief Collector from director Alison Odo. And the description reads, the 1985 theft of Willem de Kooning's woman Ocher was already a scandal, but when the perpetrators and their motives are uncovered, a far more outrageous, criminal, and utterly irresistible story of a seemingly mild-mannered couple in rural Arizona emerges. You know what? Lately, I have just been really about art heist and art conspiracy films. There have been a few that have come out over the last year, and I can't think of the names right now. But Netflix has a couple art conspiracy films that came out, I think, over the last year. And apparently it's just a very interesting subject with I guess art just kind of breeds mystery and controversy. So this seems to be an addition to that subgenre of mystery filmmaking, documentary filmmaking. Um, and yeah, I'm all about it. I love conspiracies. I love mystery. I love uncovering the truth and getting different perspectives, and so yeah, I'm about it.
I mean, I sort of skimmed over this one in the list, but to be fair, I didn't really closely read the synopsis. But as soon as you started talking about it before we started recording,
Mhm.
about like there's an art theft, and that leads to a conspiracy, and there's mild mannered people who are not, and I'm just like, but suddenly I was like, okay, I'm in on this.
there's 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 levels, there's layers to
Like
it.
the closer you get to the Thomas Crown affair, the more interested I'm going to be with this art heist movie,
Yes.
basically.
That's funny. Right. So anyway, I think so those are the ones that we're most excited about. I wanted to give a couple honorable mentions, just things that I have screened pre-festival and can't talk a whole lot about yet until their premiere, but might be things that you want to put on your radar. One of them is the short film Blue Room. And I'm going to try to pronounce this name again. I think it's Moretti Mueller. It's an 11-minute film, and it's about the how I guess a prison is like trying to accommodate the needs of mental health for inmates by having them watch nature on like in looping TV videos. And it's a very interesting concept. And again, I can't talk a whole lot about it, but one of the reasons this movie actually piqued my interest is because it's edited by the director of a film that I actually watched at Hot Docs a couple years ago called Acts of Love, Isidore Bethel. I kind of kept in touch with him over the years, and it seems like every year at Hot Docs he has another project that he's editing or that he's worked on or collaborated with, and it's so cool to keep up with the work that he has going on. And so he brought this one up to my attention, and I'm excited to have other people see it and to promote more of his work, at least in this case as an editor.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's that. Another one that I want to bring to your attention but can't talk a whole lot about just yet is a film called Relative, from director Tracy Smith. This is such an interesting movie because it's just a lot of open conversation about the history of sexual abuse within a family. And I mean, it's an interesting premise, and I think the vulnerability is something that is tough to address in movies like this, or true stories like this, I guess. So I think there's so much exploration in how to address this very confusing subject matter when you do have to like reconcile the deeds of family members who you're supposed to love and care about. So Relative is another one that I would put on your list. And then the last honorable mention that I want to talk about without talking about it is is The Quiet Epidemic, from directors Lindsay Keys and Winslow Crane Murdoch. And this one caught my attention because it's kind of nice, and I don't want to say kind of nice. I want to invest myself into other crises outside of the COVID-19, other health crises outside of COVID-19, because, as it turns out, other sicknesses do exist out there besides COVID-19, despite the fact that we've been kind of submerged in that for the last 2 years. But the crazy thing about it is that I spent this whole movie thinking about COVID-19. and
I mean, that's going to happen, right?
Well, when you see it, you'll understand why. I think that in many ways it draws. And I'm not going to say it draws, but ultimately it's about Lyme disease. The Quiet Epidemic is a study on, or at least uncovering of how ignored Lyme disease is by the health community and scientific professionals for various self-interested reasons, right? And I really respect the fact that this movie is at Hot Docs now, in particular, and when you watch it, maybe you'll see why. It just is a fascinating topic.
It is on my list. I haven't had a chance to screen it yet, but I do have an opportunity to screen it in front of me. So we will talk after.
I cannot wait to talk more about this. I think that there are big discussions that can be had about it. And I think, if this movie hits the way that I think it will, there's going to be a lot of debates about what exactly to take away from this film. So, so yeah, there we go.
I have two other honorable mentions I would like to mention, sure, if you got 30 seconds. One is there's a 24-minute short documentary called Bill Reed Remembers. I don't know if the name does anything for you living in Washington State, but in Canada and in BC in particular, where I live, Bill Reed is a very important First Nations artist. If you've traveled through Vancouver and noticed the big Haida sculptures in YVR, you have seen Bill Reed's work, and it's all over Vancouver, it's all over Western Canada, and in Toronto as well. And he's a very important figure, and I'm very much looking forward to, again, any amount of depth, diving into his work and why he does it and where he comes from. And then there's another one that is sort of the other way, on the other side of things. There's one called The United States of America, which is a Canadian premiere. I think it's already played at a festival before. I don't know which one. But it is, from what I understand, It is made up of 52 shots, all of which are static, each one representing a state, and it's 100 minutes long. And I find that just really interesting. It seems like something that is probably not for everyone, but might be exactly for me.
Yeah, that one actually did come across my radar. It sounds very experimental, I guess, in terms of like style of filmmaking is probably very unconventional in a way.
100%. It's the type of thing where, again, it sounds like it might not be for everyone, but it's the type of thing that it's exactly the type of thing I like going to festivals for, seeing stuff you're not going to just generally see. And even when it doesn't succeed, although again, I haven't seen this, I don't know if it will or not, but even if it doesn't, I never regret having seen them.
Yeah, I mean, it almost even sounds kind of meditative in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, and I am into it. And apparently it's more than 52. It's 52 shots because they also include Washington, D.C. and also Puerto Rico. So they're including some cultural centers, that places that should be states that aren't.
That's funny. Maybe that's why I always get the number of states and the number of cards in the deck mixed up. Because I know how many states there are, but every time someone asks, I have to pause and be like, wait, is it 50 or 52? It's 50. I know that. But why do I keep thinking 52? That's cards in the deck. Now I know.
I can tell you exactly why my mind always thinks there's 52 states. That's because in an early episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, they find a 21st century spaceship with an American flag on it that has 52 stars. And they very specifically pointed out. And that's just been stuck in my brain since I was about 9.
All they did was muddy the water. They just made it even more confusing. It made it harder for us to remember. Oh man, that's messed up.
Yeah, it's true.
Anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Matt, I appreciate you joining me to discuss some Hot Docs titles that we're looking forward to. And of course, there's tons of other movies that we haven't even mentioned that have played at other festivals. There's a bunch of world premieres going on. Like Hot Docs is really obviously a great exhibition of documentaries, and I encourage everyone to dive in headfirst for it. Matt, how can people find your content and coverage of Hot Docs?
People can find me at awesomefriday.ca on the web, mostly the Awesome Friday podcast, anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find me on Twitter at SmatthewAF or Awesome Friday CA, and that also works for Instagram, both of them. And you can find us on Facebook as well if you look even a little bit.
Even a little bit. They're there.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can find me and my coverage of Hot Docs at thisisforreal.com. And also connect with ForReel on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Links are on the website and will probably be in the description if I'm predicting well enough. You can also connect with me personally on Twitter and Instagram at beingtsj. And yeah, that I think that covers it. So cool. Thanks again, Matt, for hopping onto this. And for everyone out there watching, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate that. And until the next time I hop onto another one of these videos, this is For Real.